So, welcome back everybody to episode 15 of Error Correcting Erik, and we have a very special episode today, another intermission episode, and joining us from across the globe is the lovely Zakery. Welcome, Zakery.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Erik.
So glad that you're able to join us today.
I'm very excited to be here. I'm a little bit nervous even to be here. I'm so excited. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So Zakery is a fellow Deutschian, and he's mainly interested in the topics of aesthetics and the link with knowledge. So we're going to have a discussion on that today. So today we will not be diving into another chapter of the book. We're going to have the discussion on Zakery's favorite subject. But before we begin, Zakery, can you introduce yourself and explain a little bit about yourself and what your content is about and what your channel is about?
Well, my name is Zakery. I'm mostly interested in finding new ways for appreciating art, because I just want to appreciate art. I just really like art. Mm-hmm. And I've always been inspired by people describing different ways of appreciating art. And I recently came into contact with David Deutsch earlier this year even, and I saw his lecture on YouTube about why flowers are beautiful. And it touched me in a way that I haven't been touched before. And it really changed a lot of how I think about art and aesthetics. So then I've tried to apply all of the principles of Popperian epistemology and constructor theory and all the related things to that to aesthetics. And it seems to work really well, and it's given me an interesting worldview about it. So I want to share that, and that's mostly what I'm sharing on my YouTube channel.
Cool.
Maybe just a follow up for me, that kind of like, what was your journey there, Zakery? Like you said last year you came across Deutsch. So did you catch up on all of Popper's work and Deutsch's work in that 1 year and kind of went full, I guess, the hardcore mode there, or what were you doing before? What was your philosophy before that? Because whenever we talk about these things, it's always interesting to know like what was like almost what broke the spell, right? I guess for me it was more like a postmodern spell that was broken in a sense, not completely off the rails, but a little bit. So yeah, what was that for you, I guess? Yeah.
Well, really for me, it was actually this year. It was January 8th, 2025. So that's when I saw the lecture about why flowers are beautiful, and that was my introduction to Deutsch. So this year, and I did immediately buy his book, and then I bought his other book. So I bought The Beginning of Infinity, read that, and then I bought The Fabric of Reality and read that. So that was really it. Before that, I did have, I guess I was kind of interested in philosophy. I was mostly interested in like Zen Buddhism, that type of philosophy. So that's really, and I still quite like it. So nothing really changed in terms of that philosophy, because I liked it for just paying attention to your thoughts or expanding the mind or things related to that. I like meditation, for example. So that was my main interest in terms of philosophy. Everything else that I knew philosophically was just kind of passing interest. I did know a lot about philosophy, but not, nothing serious. I've always just been interested in art, and I have been familiar with critical theory because of its connection to art. So critical theory kind of started as new forms for criticizing poetry, and then that kind of exploded into interpreting the law in special ways or whatever. So I was familiar with that because of the connection to art, but really I didn't have too much philosophical commitments.
Right. And I would be very interesting to know what exactly about his session on flowers and beauty triggered you. But before we dive into that, you have a strong interest in art. Are you also an artist yourself? Do you paint? Do you write poetry? Is it a hobby? Is it your work?
I do. Well, I play piano. So I play piano. I wouldn't really say, it's definitely not professionally. It's not very well. I do it out of just necessity. Even since I was a kid, I've always thought about music, and I've just wanted to hear the music that I thought about. And I would much prefer to be able to just find it. I'd much prefer going through Spotify and hearing the music. But a lot of the ideas that I have are just not out in the world. So I was kind of forced to make them or learn how to make them in some way. So that is my artistic anything. Besides that, I was recently an electrical engineer, so that was my profession, and I quit because I didn't like it very much. I did it for way too long, so something like 8 years or something like that. So I don't actually have a job at the moment. I'm full-time writing about aesthetics and making YouTube videos.
Cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's nice.
Did you have any like formal, I guess, artistic training? Anything that like got you into this previously, or was it kind of purely like this abstract sense of pursuing beauty objectively rather than kind of testing it out, I guess, into a realistic into reality? Sorry.
Yeah, I did have some basic, like when I was a kid, I played piano and I had like classical training, but not super in depth. And then when I was in college, I was in a jazz band and I took jazz classes at my college. And then I took a film studies class in college. So that's kind of my formal training, if we can call it that. Sure. And at some point after college, I bought a book from Schoenberg about how it's called Fundamentals of Musical Composition, and it's about how to structure classical music. And at the time, I had never really listened to classical music, but I was just interested in learning how to structure music because I'd been writing music and the structure of it was really bad. So I wanted to learn how to structure music, and I read this book about classical music, and it was immediately obvious to me that I could port everything that I learned from classical music into jazz or whatever type of music I was making. So that was really impactful moment for me, for many reasons. It also taught me how to listen to classical music, and I learned that it was possible to learn how to appreciate music. And I wanted to then learn how to appreciate other arts. So that type of thing that's kind of my starting point there, but no real super formal training.
Okay. One kind of curious question before maybe we continue. What favorite movie director?
Favorite director. So maybe my favorite movie is a Tarkovsky movie, and that's Stalker. Great movie. Mm-hmm. Okay. My favorite director will probably be Kurosawa. High and Low, To Live, Rashomon, those movies. And I really like Kubrick. So that type of those types of movies.
Okay. Cool. You're just trying to like map out a little bit where everything lies, yeah.
Is the movie related to the video game Stalker?
Yes. It's that. Yeah, Roadside Picnic. They go to the zone.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the game is way more action packed.
Yeah.
I've never played it, but there's like monsters and stuff, and you have to do things. The movie is like the most boring thing you've ever seen in your life. They just walk through the zone, and nothing actually happens in the entire movie. And it's amazing in so many levels, but it's incredibly boring, especially if you're not used to watching old movies. Yeah. So I wouldn't recommend it if you're used to exciting things, or if you're not familiar with the slow pace of really old movies.
I see. Interesting. Yeah, I played the original game and I really enjoyed that, especially like the atmosphere that they were able to portray there, like the bleakness of the zone. Brilliant. So I will definitely check the movie out. It's actually on my to watch list for a while now.
Nice.
All right.
Definitely let me know how you like it.
Yeah, I will. Okay, let's go back to the spark, the episode of David Deutsch that really triggered you to read him. And so his YouTube talk on why are flowers beautiful. What did it mean for you, and what were your main takeaways?
So I want to go a little bit further back just to round it off. I am a fan of a philosopher. His name is Kapil Gupta, and he's done a podcast with Naval, and Naval has done podcasts with David Deutsch. So that's kind of how it got into my feed at all. So just wanted to set that up front. And then for whatever, I'm just committed to looking at videos or reading things from people who are obsessed with art. So I assumed that Why Our Flower is Beautiful was about art and beauty, obviously. So that's why I watched the video at all. And I was rolling my eyes throughout the whole thing, as anybody, I'm sure you've experienced that same thing when you listen to it or when you watch the video or read the chapter. But when he started saying things like beauty is a form of truth that can grow infinitely, and then the implications of that's when my ears perked up. And I thought, okay, I really need to understand why he's saying these things. And he doesn't really go into detail in the lecture itself. He just kind of he says that it's similar to truth, or the way that we discover new things about art and beauty is similar to how we discover things about science. So that is what got me interested in, okay, what is this epistemology that he's talking about? And then that's how I fell into it.
And I guess moving on from that, then, like, how did you start applying it? Like, where do you, and apologies, Erik, if you have a specific structure of questionings, but I'm just, I just came at this, fully winging it. But yeah, so how are you applying that into your work, and maybe what's your channel about, and what do you do practically, and do you prepare for it? Like, imagine we.
So the first. Yeah. Okay, the first and main thing was him saying that beauty is a form of truth. So I don't know if he means that actually or strictly or whatever, but then taking that and then trying to just make the analogy of beauty and truth, and then how we get to truth through the fallible process of trial and error, and then doing that with beauty. Or doing that with art, and seeing art as this process of trial and error, and then assuming that every aspect of art can improve because it's all error prone. David, he makes the caveat that everything in art that is reflecting objective beauty can be improved infinitely. So he makes a clear distinction between things that are not objectively beautiful. They don't necessarily improve infinitely, but the things that are objectively beautiful, they improve infinitely. So that's an interesting thing. Like, how do you distinguish the difference between subjective beauty versus objective beauty? And that's something to look out for. And trying to figure out what that difference is, or thinking about that difference, is one of the things that I've been thinking about. Yeah. Really, the main thing, though, I think the main thing is when you see beauty as a form of truth, it makes sense to also just say beauty is a form of knowledge. And when that connection is made, you no longer only look at an entire work of art as beautiful or not beautiful. You have to look at the problems and the solution to the problems within the work of art as beautiful or not beautiful. Okay. So it's like as if you were looking at a technology. You wouldn't say that the phone is true or false or whatever. You'd say the code is encompassing knowledge. Right? So that's a part of the phone. It's not the entire phone. Right? So having that difference of framework, I think that's a major thing there.
And when you say problem, and one thought I had as you were saying, I think David Deutsch even error corrected the phrase trial by trial and error. He said it's trial by error. Yeah. It took me a while. Yeah, I was like, damn, even that sentence. He made that one better. But yeah, going on the problem then. What's a problem to you in beauty or aesthetics or art? Yeah.
Well, I think there are numerous. There's so many of them, right? But the basic ones, the easiest ones to see, especially as a person who's not an artist, would just be any particular transformation, right? This is thinking more in terms of constructor theory, if you have a part of the art where you want to catch somebody's attention, catching attention is a transformation. And you can have a particular structure of the work of art that reliably does that. And you could make it do it even more reliably. So that's something basic. Now, it doesn't have to be, obviously, most of David Deutsch's talk about flowers is about attention, but it doesn't have to be only about grabbing attention. It could also be moving attention away, like you don't want to look at certain parts, you want to direct it towards something else. But it could also even be just about triggering certain emotions within a person, or giving lessons, or just information. Like you can have a work of art that is explicitly made to tell somebody something. And all of those things are just the normal way that we would think about knowledge. Those are transformations on the world. And you can do those with art, and you can make them better.
I see. And has his views influenced your art in any way? Have you applied it to your music?
Is there
Yes,
like a
it
post
has
and pre-Zakery, like
Yeah.
post-Deutsch Zakery, the blue period, or what do they call it?
A transformed Zakery, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Definitely not super strongly with my music. I've always been very experimental with my music. And so I've always been... I'll just say not with my music. I also just don't make a lot of music these days. So there's just been a lack of me making music. But in terms of me making YouTube videos, way more. And more than just, I wouldn't say it's only the view about beauty that influenced me and changed how I made YouTube videos, but it's the whole worldview, the whole idea, specifically the idea of a person being a universal explainer, and the fact that any person has the ability to improve any idea. Mm-hmm. So just really just absorbing that and recognizing that anybody could help solve whatever problems I'm thinking about. That to me means that I would want to share my ideas and expose them to more people so that they can help improve them independently, because all of my ideas are independently improvable. So that kind of explains a little bit of why I've made so many more YouTube videos in recent times, is because I've been exposed to David Deutsch's philosophy.
I see. Okay, cool.
And is, like, maybe
also,
go ahead.
Oh, go on, Thomas, please.
I follow. Like, is there something that we could maybe talk about, like very specifically, that you feel would be a good use case that an audience would understand in terms of that improvement of the ideas, of the problems it solves, of the beauty, in that infinite kind of sense. I don't know if it makes more sense to use something like that you've created, or something that everybody knows that is in kind of our zeitgeist. Let's say the Mona Lisa or something. I'm just thinking out loud, like how do we improve the Mona Lisa, and how would we even start addressing that question?
Okay, yeah. So for the Mona Lisa, I don't think the goal isn't to improve the work of art. The goal is to improve the knowledge within the work of art. So there are many techniques that the Mona Lisa had. Like the Mona Lisa is composed in a particular way. The arrangement of all of the elements they're arranged in a particular way. And there was a certain amount of knowledge that Da Vinci had at the time for how to arrange things in a painting. And we've improved those things. So that is the thing that improves. Also the technique for shading, or I don't know what that's, there's like a specific technique that he used about to remove outlines. Mm-hmm. Those things have been improved. So that is the thing that could be improved. Now you can then use those to go back into the Mona Lisa and make them better in those ways. But the framework isn't about improving the Mona Lisa, it's about improving the specific knowledge within the Mona Lisa.
I see.
Can you elaborate a bit on that? Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, if I can do a little analogy, sure. It's not about, like, if I have a phone, I have a phone and the phone has knowledge. I don't want to just improve the phone kind of generally. I want to improve the specific app on the phone. I want to make this app do this thing better. I want to make this code run more efficiently. So by doing those specific things, I am improving the phone, but it doesn't really matter what I do with the phone because the knowledge is all abstract. So once I improve the code in this particular phone, now I've improved how to deploy this particular code for all phones for everybody in the future, and so on. So it's more about the knowledge that's embodied in the phone, improving that rather than improving the phone itself. And that's the analogy to the work of art and the knowledge embodied within the work of art.
Yeah, I've seen a video analysis once on why the Mona Lisa is such an important painting and why it is considered as one of the best ever. And I believe, if I remember correctly, that there were a couple of techniques used for the very first time, which are now considered as a basic good practice, but back then were completely new. And one of the techniques I remember is like the background isn't painted as sharp as the face. It's a bit blurry, which is how human perception works. And also the background colors, they are way more muted than the colors in the front layers, because that's exactly how we perceive the world. And before that painting, that was not commonly done. So I believe he experimented with completely new painting techniques, creating new knowledge on how to create good paintings. And that is one of the reasons why the Mona Lisa is considered as such a masterpiece, because it really pioneered modern techniques. It was used to create new knowledge in how to create paintings. And I believe, Zakery, that might be your point?
Exactly. That is exactly it, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And now, so to apply it to something that I do, which is I'm just making YouTube videos. So if I'm making YouTube videos, for example, and again, this is just something very basic. I want to make a YouTube video. I want people to watch it, right? So there's a way that I can start my YouTube video that will catch people's attention. And if I just want to improve that, I can do my own trial and error by myself, like totally by myself, or I can look at other YouTube videos and see how they catch attention at the beginning, or look at any other work of art and see how they catch attention, and then take that knowledge and apply it to my YouTube video. And then from there, do the trial and error and see how to make it fit within what I'm actually saying or my style. And that is really the way that I would want to, that's how I'm looking at art now, more in that sense.
Yeah, so it's not that much about the end result, but the process and the knowledge creating that goes into it is an important element.
Right. And then I'm kind of going a tangent here, but now when I'm looking at appreciating any work of art, if I'm viewing any work of art and they're doing something wrong, like the intro doesn't catch my attention, I can understand what they're doing wrong. Like I can see this is like the boundary of where this solution doesn't work. It doesn't work in this case because this and that, whatever reason why it failed in that case. And then now you have knowledge, and then you have the problems, like the boundaries of where the knowledge doesn't fit anymore, which is just it's essentially saying that these are the problems. This is where it doesn't apply. So that's how I think about it.
Okay, I see.
Give an example of that. Like, what's the most recent one, or kind of thing that you looked at where you had that kind of insight where this is where that stopped, and what were you think? What were the ideas around why you thought it stopped there?
So one of the most recent ones, it's just something that I did on my YouTube video. I was trying to make graphics to make the video more organized. So there's just a way of structuring the video and structuring it into sections, and then during the transition between sections, having graphics on the screen display what section that you're in. So I just wanted to try doing that because I've seen other people do that, and I just made bad graphics. So using graphics to separate sections is a good solution. But when your graphics are bad, it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the boundary there. That's the understanding of the limits of that knowledge.
Could that be? Could that have something to do with, as you were saying that, I was thinking about where, old movies, right, where the Hitchcocks and stuff, where, let's say where it was like the splitting of the sea or something would be like simulated via, something very rudimentary in a studio way back when, where they would just have, even sometimes like jelly or something splitting rather than I forget which movie this was, but I went to one of the studios and they gave these examples of how they used to do these kind of old school, visuals, and a lot of the time when people see the movie now, although maybe the speed of it, right, is it's slower, and audiences now just expect more movement, I guess, in a certain sense, and I don't know if that's actually accurate, because I think there are a lot of good slow movies today as well, but there a lot of these things still today we kind of forgive, because the movie, the story, the whole thing is just so good, and that's why you have sometimes these massive blockbuster movies where there's just so much money spent on all the animation and all the megabytes and terabytes of computing power that's needed to make a transformer bot or something, but then the storyline isn't as solid or decent, and then people don't forgive that, right? So it's almost like the movie flops with better graphics, but a worse story than the other way around, and that to me was also so profound. Like, the idea that you look at something and it has to be, like the best pixels or something, or the most granular in sense of like a technical quality, also is undermined by that, I feel. So, because we were talking about Picasso and how he technically got better at stuff, but maybe what he was doing wasn't necessarily only a technical innovation, but it was a new innovation from his time. And then if we would just make the shades of gray kind of, and this is not a reference to the book at all, if we would make the painting a little bit more more realistic or something, or like more mapping onto what actual shade looks like to the human eye. And again, qualia, we don't even know what that means, right? So it's a bit of I guess a weird discussion to have in the first place, but interesting one. I guess, how do you look at that then? Is it, obviously you can't necessarily have one without the other, but there's like limits to where you can, like you said, invest more into the graphics, and like and maybe that's the problem situation that you were talking about. Like there's a certain time where the broader problem that you're trying to solve needs to be addressed rather than the distractions of the technicalities around it. Yeah, just maybe if you have thoughts about that.
Yeah, definitely. So the idea here is that there's a specific transformation in the work of art. And by transformation, I mean when a person views this work of art and it has these graphics and animations from the 50s or whatever, it causes a certain effect reliably in people. So you might have a cool effect from the 50s, and you have to guess this. Everybody says, that's cool, and the response is, that's cool. Okay, I'm just being a little bit glib here just to make it simpler. But the response when everybody sees the graphics is, that's cool. So there's a reliable transformation for this particular graphic when this movie is from the 50s having these bad graphics, which would mean that since this transformation, which is knowledge, is abstract, it should also apply when in a new movie. So if I have a new movie and I use the same graphics from the 50s and I apply it, I would expect that everybody responds, that's cool. But the actual response is, that's weird, or that's bad. And now I have to update my theory of what the knowledge is. So I thought the knowledge was the graphics, but now I've learned that it's the graphics and the fact that it's in an old movie. Mm. You can't have really great, like regular camera shots and then bad graphics and then back to regular. That doesn't work. So now I've learned more about my theory of what I thought was beautiful, or what I thought was the transformation, what was causing the transformation. So I have to update that. And then now I have to make another movie. Okay, now I smooth out the graphics in some way and make the rest of the movie look a little bit gritty so that it blends in better, and see if that has a good effect or not. And that's the process of determining what part of the work of art is actually causing the transformation, and then being able to improve that.
Interesting. So I guess how do you kind of, I guess, a proxy for measuring this? Like, what is that to you? Is it the views? Is it your own thoughts of it as you rewatch it, or is it feedback? And because you could I could have 100 people that don't appreciate. It's like pop music as well. A lot of these things aren't really necessarily like objectively good. They're like having just a catchy tune.
Well, I disagree with that, but I'll flag that and keep going.
Okay, yeah, please do, yeah. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I'll be the first guy out there, bouncing my head on any of the like popular songs. But I guess as it contrasts to, let's say, a classical piece of Mozart or something, I guess there lie in a bit more and maybe I can already hear what you're going to say to this. It's going to be something like they're solving a different problem within that context. So, and I'd like to hear as well your thoughts on that. But then, how do you for yourself make that measurement? And is it solely reliant on like the views, the vanity metrics as we typically call them, and how do you objectively know that that's an objective thing? How do you try and get closer to that? And it's maybe just not 100 people just accidentally or they just have lesser knowledge of the thing or something.
Right. So this is one of the open problems I think here, because it's difficult to put. The way that I would want to do this is to take any work of art or any particular, I'm going to call it an aesthetic solution. I might just call it beauty also, but I mean the knowledge that is embodied in the work of art. I'd want to put that into different contexts. Mm-hmm. So by different context, I mean multiple people view it, people view it multiple times. So I'd want the effect to be reliable, even if I'm watching it multiple times. I want the effect to be reliable if it's in my movie, and if it's in your movie, and if it's in a TikTok, and if it's in a YouTube video. So these are different contexts. And then I want it to be a reliable effect even over time. So, with people from the 30s, with 1930s, and people from the 2030s, I'd want a similar reliable effect. And then I'd also want a similar reliable effect of people in different universes in the multiverse, right? So there are, all these different ways to measure reliability. I don't think you don't necessarily need to have it reliable in all of those ways, but you want it to be reliable in some of those ways. Mm-hmm. And some of those are much harder to actually measure. So there's a problem with that. And of course, the easiest to measure is just how many people, enjoy it.
Right. Did I hear you right there? You have communication line with your multiverse?
Unfortunately, I do not.
Counterpart.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I do not. But I just take that as it's kind of a translation in my mind of what it means to be hard to vary. And the way that I'm translating that is that if something is true, it applies in multiple contexts. So if Newtonian mechanics is true, it applies to everything on Earth, and it applies to the perihelion of Mercury, right? That means it's true. And if it's true if it applies today and tomorrow. And it's true if it applies in this universe and our neighboring universe in the multiverse, right? And if we use it, we can see that it works in all of those contexts except Mercury. And that is the boundary of, where it no longer works. So that's how I'm thinking about it. And that's the same way I'm thinking about beauty. The effect of the work of art works for a person today and tomorrow, multiple different people, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. And I believe I'm starting to understand what you mean with like the different problem solving. And if I combine that with what you said, Thomas, about better visuals in movies, when we think about what makes a good movie, we will say, okay, the dialogue and the film direction and the script and the casting and the acting and the setting and the scenery and the cinematography. Those are the elements of a good movie. But then you have movies like Avatar, which don't necessarily have a great story or great acting or great script. They're visual showcases, but still that movie is the most popular movie ever and probably made the most money ever. So how is that possible? But if I apply your way of thinking, I believe that it's solving a different problem. If you take Avatar as a movie that is some escapist fantasy, if you want to go to a lush alien planet, that's not possible. We can't do that yet. So the closest thing that you can be to being and experiencing a lush alien planet is by watching Avatar. So that's one problem that it solves, which is a completely different type of problem as you want to see a good movie with a good script and so on. So it is successful and beautiful in its own right, and maybe not even comparable to a classical movie.
So is it then the let's call it the solution for a second to the problem, although maybe I'm being loose with my jargon here, but that are we judging the solution then on its objectivity, and that is what then the beauty is purporting to be?
Yes.
Yeah, or are we also able to so let's say there's a problem and in this hypothetical where you have two people making, let's use movies because we're on movies, two people making a movie about the same thing, right? Like, and one is better than the other. Is it? I mean, I guess it's possible that they're both kind of very good, and nobody can really discern which one's better because they're just both amazing and they're about the same problem. But then, is that even possible to be solving the same exact problem in this context of beauty?
I think it wouldn't be possible for a entire film to be solving the same problem. It might be, but again, it's more about things within the film that are solving the same problem, and those can be better or worse. So the easiest way to have a comparison is if you have one thing and then you try to improve that one thing, right? So if you have, how do I describe this? Well, if you just have a part of a movie and you want that part of the movie to be emotional in some way, you want to like trigger some emotion. So you have the scene that you're thinking to trigger the emotion, and then you want to determine what is the best way to do it. So you have the original of the scene, let's say, and then you have an alternative, which is the same as the scene, but it's slightly redder. You just have like a red filter over it. So now you have two things that are trying to solve the same problem, and one of them is going to be better. So that's how you have this direct overlap, and you can say one of them is going to work with a certain amount of people, and the other one is going to work with more people. So in that case, you have a direct, this one is this reliable and this one is more reliable. And that's the kind of the direct, you can choose one as better than the other one. When you have an entire work of art, though, since they're solving different problems, slightly different problems and different things, you don't really have a complete overlap. So one is not going to be better completely in all ways than the other one. So then the comparison gets a little bit more strained.
Right. And maybe drilling a little bit deeper there on, let's say, for example, what I'm very interested in as it relates to like movies and just generally talking and communication is there a objective way to, let's say, for example, communicate something better than and then it's like in storytelling almost, that's where I want to go to. Like, are there objectively better forms of storytelling versus another? Any insights there?
Yeah, I do think that there are better ways to express things, yes.
Okay.
And there are better ways to express them such that other people have the idea replicated in their mind, right? That's kind of the measure of actually communicating the idea. There are ways to do that better, and there are ways to do that worse. Yes. And then with a work of art, in terms of, are there better? So the way that I heard that, I know you didn't say it directly like this, but are there better or worse mediums for works of art? And I think there are. Okay. For certain things. I think there are certain works, there are certain mediums that are more efficient at certain types of transformations. I can describe something visually, and I can describe the same thing with text. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be differently efficient, right? One's going to be more efficient for describing certain things, and the other one's going to be describing, more efficient describing other things. And you can figure out which ones are more efficient for what. And I think that is, so for certain ideas, they're going to fit better in certain mediums, whether it be visual, auditory, textual, or combination. And I think a lot of the fun of art is to convey the same information in multiple different forms, right? So if I have a movie and I want to convey, that a character is feeling a certain emotion, you convey it by that character saying certain words. You also convey it by that character doing certain actions. You also convey it by having a certain cinematography. You also convey it with a certain music, and they're all conveying the same idea. So when you have that multi-layered, there's a multi-layered transformation, because any one of those things would cause the same transformation in the mind of the person viewing it. Now they're all working together, and that also kind of doubles down on the fact that the knowledge is abstract, because the knowledge is textual, the knowledge is visual, the knowledge is auditory. It's all of those things, and that reliably makes your mind transform such that it gets the information.
Yeah, right. I see. Yeah. And when we're talking about ways of communicating information and knowledge, it reminds me of the chapter of the book that we discussed, that I believe David explains that beauty might be a form to cross-communicate between species, because it explains why flowers are attractive towards bees, which are completely different organisms. It's even not even close. One is a plant, the other one is an insect, an animal. So if you want to cross-communicate, where do you even begin? And I think he suggested that beauty is a way to do that. So what would be your take on that insight?
I agree, but I also struggle with that one. Yeah. That's one that it's difficult for me, because I think that even objective beauty still requires knowledge. Mm-hmm. So I will take an analogy here. Let's say if we want to communicate with aliens, I've heard people talk about this before. If you want to communicate with an alien, one way to do it is to have a draw on a line, draw like a stick, draw a line as like a unit, and then draw another line that is proportional to pi. Yeah. So then the aliens will recognize that you understand what pi is. Yeah. And that's interesting, because it's obviously, that's something that is considered to be quite objective knowledge, right? Mm-hmm. It would be consistent across any group of people. It would be consistent across the multiverse and so on. But then the analogy kind of continues, because if I wanted to explain quantum mechanics to an alien, I would still have to give them many, many layers of knowledge before they can understand that. I can't just give them quantum mechanics directly. Right. So I'm taking that back to the analogy here with flowers, for example. Let's say that's something that's beautiful, and it's very, very basically beautiful without needing many layers of knowledge to understand it. But then once you get to, Beethoven and Mozart and, the beautiful works of art that we have, when you start watching Kubrick, you're going to need layers of knowledge to understand that beauty. So, I agree in some sense, but, there's some difficulty.
Yeah, I see. And that reminds me of, I believe NASA has sent like a golden plaque into space on a probe, and it contains like engravings of like these basic mathematical principles and the hydrogen atom and else, and some like instructions.
Some songs, I think.
Yeah, so some like instructions on how to play the record, and it contains like images
Right.
and I believe classical music actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that idea is it has the basic mathematical things to prove like, hey, we're intelligent, we're proving it, and that makes sense to me. It's like objective knowledge in that basic sense. It applies to everybody, and every intelligent species would be able to recognize it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think all objective knowledge would be easy to recognize without some layers of shared knowledge.
Yeah,
And that's the main point that David Deutsch is saying, is that beauty, some forms of beauty, some forms of objective beauty are communicating with zero shared knowledge.
yeah.
Right.
Such as flowers.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's your conjecture there, Zakery? Like what is like in your endeavors and trying to understand and apply all these things, like what is beauty?
Well, I think it's just knowledge, a form of knowledge. Now, what is knowledge? I don't. It's the same type of question. Like, what is truth? I'm not sure, but I can describe. There are structures that can come into the world, and they are reliable. Or another way of saying is that they persist, and they're hard to vary. So they persist and they can replicate because they're hard to vary, and so on. So that's kind of the route I would go by saying that, by trying to answer that. What is beauty? It's a form of truth. It is a form of physical structure that is stable.
So it's like David Deutsch says, knowledge is knowledge has a characteristic that once it's embodied in a physical substrate, it wants to remain so, and it kind of it has error correction, right? Its ability to go against the entropy, the laws of entropy, right? Like that knowledge is one of the only things that really does that, where it doesn't wither and kind of compounds and does new things, and I guess having obviously the physical substrate of the universe is what it is, but then like within that, if I think there's like some knowledge has more reach than others, right? So that's why Newton, although completely debunked by Einsteinian physics, still has reach because it still works for that problem scope or that problem specific set that you want to do if you're in specific, was it speeds of something, right? So, but then if you're gonna objectively look at it, you would say, well, the Einstein's equations solve. You could do all of that. It just take a little bit more compute power because there's slightly more algorithmic realities to doing those equations than the other one. So from that perspective, is that also beautiful then? Like that it solves it, like the one does more but needs more computation, and maybe I'm not, if there's physicists listening, like, sorry if this is not true, but I think there is a component of simplicity more to Newtonian working out those equations mathematically. So is because then now the way that we're talking about it, I'm like, well then how do we even come to begin what objective knowledge or truth is? Because if it's always problem specific, which it always is, then why does the conversation even matter? You know what I mean? Like, why can we say that Mozart is objectively more beautiful than the caveman banging on sticks in the cave, or can't we? Do you have something about that to say? Because I would say, yeah, just banging on sticks randomly in caves isn't, well, maybe to them had a different problem they were solving in terms of scaring away animals, and that led to maybe somebody thinking, oh, there's something rhythmic potentially that came from this, and who knows what kind of how that developed. But Mozart is objectively more beautiful, right? So I guess is that so, and why is that so? And I know that's what the whole chapter is about, and I know we're not going to solve that problem here with the three of us, but what is, like, if in this specific set of sticks banging and Mozart, like, if you had to give a couple of criteria that differentiate the one being more objectively beautiful than the other, what would those be?
So I just want to step back into the comparison between Einstein and Newtonian mechanics.
Right.
And I think that Newtonian mechanics works within a certain range of applications, not including the perihelion of Mercury, right? That's the clear one. And Einstein works in all of those, every case that Newton works, plus the perihelion of Mercury, plus obviously more. And that is a measure of how reliable it is. So the description works for all things on Earth, all things in time, plus Mercury, plus black holes, and so on. And one is more reliable than the other. So one is a physical structure, in this case, abstract structure, it's a knowledge. One is a structure that applies more reliably. So that is the way I want to think about it. Okay. Now, cavemen banging on a rocks and stuff, that is effective, that is beautiful, that works for a certain range. It's reliable in a certain range. But Mozart is way more reliable in a much wider range, which means that people banging rocks, even banging a rock, it's hard to remember that. So it can't replicate into your mind, or it's difficult to replicate in your mind because it's hard to vary, or it's easy to vary. Yeah. And since it's easy to vary, you can't abstract the sound or whatever the pattern is to in your mind. That's why you need to have a rhythm, because when you have a rhythm, then the rhythm is easy to replicate because it's hard to vary, right? So because it is easy to vary, it can't replicate in your mind. It would be different in different parts of the multiverse. And that means that the range of applicability is pretty narrow. Whereas with Mozart, it's written down pretty well. It's written down following certain principles. And that makes it hard to vary, which means in different parts of the multiverse, it's going to be the same.
Yeah.
Which means that when people listen to it, they can hear it and replicate it in their mind, which means that it's a much wider, much broader range of applicability. So it's more reliable. And that's how I would say that this is more objectively beautiful.
Huh. I see. So it has to do with, it reminds me a bit of good and bad explanations, where a good explanation is harder to vary. And I can also see that probably the creation of Mozart, his pieces contain way much more knowledge than if you would make a script of the sticks and stones being banged against the wall. It probably takes way less knowledge to create those kinds of sounds or written music than it would be for Mozart.
Right. And there's not even a path for improving, banging sticks, or banging rocks, whatever. Yeah. There's no improvement. So
I see.
Because of the difficulty of even having the abstraction copy into your mind and being able to improve it, it's not. It's barely knowledge in that sense. Yeah. It's barely the world. If you think about Popper, it's not a World 3 object that people can independently improve. So that's the difference.
I see. Interesting. I think that was a good first problem to discuss. You also said that you had some problems for us. So I'm curious. Let's hear them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've got a couple problems. So one thing that I'm thinking about is, what does it even mean? And we just mentioned this actually. What does it mean to understand something? And of course, David talks about this, and he says that it's having a simulation of it in your mind is a part of understanding something. And I'm kind of thinking in the same way of, to appreciate a work of art, you first need to replicate it into your mind.
Yeah.
And then I think there's more that needs to happen, but even just that, like having something replicate into the mind, a part of a work of art replicate into the mind, I'm thinking of that as a part of appreciation. Anyway, it's not a very clear problem, but that's an idea, and I'm trying to work through that. So how does that strike you immediately?
Wait, say that again. I was struggling trying to understand that.
Yeah. So to understand something or to appreciate a work of art, it has to be replicated in the mind. And I think there's more that has to happen after that, but at least it has to be replicated in the mind.
Yeah, so
In the same way that
in order for us to appreciate the Mona Lisa, it needs to be replicated. So the image, the way it looks, the way it makes us feel, has to have an maybe impact. Is a suitable word here?
yeah.
But like
Yeah,
on the
definitely.
on the retina, you mean like like that replication on the retina, like we see it, or do you mean like I close my eyes and still see it or something? Because I could not
I
redraw
don't.
that thing, you know. So
Right. Yeah, I don't think it has to be. I don't think it has to be in the memory for a very long period of time, but it has to be in your mind. So it doesn't have to be on the retina,
right.
but in the mind. So, of course, I'm saying this because I'm having the problem, and the reason why I'm having the problem is because it's not fully fleshed out. That's why I'm mentioning this. Yeah. So it's more than just seeing it. It's seeing it and then having your attention at it as you see it. But then you also have to know what to look at, right? Because if you just have the entire picture, even if you just memorize the entire picture, you don't know the techniques or you don't know the specific things to appreciate. Like
Right.
copying the picture of the Mona Lisa from one computer to another computer doesn't mean the computer appreciates it. There's more that has to go on, but at least that has to go on, I think.
Yeah. If I follow your train of thought there needs to be some kind of, I believe, some trigger in your mind, because it can be replicated in your mind. But what makes good art then is that it does something to you. It makes you think about certain things in a certain way. It makes you feel something. So this reminds me, I have a friend, Vincent, and he just graduated as a scenography specialist, and he made like a 20. Yeah, it's the one who makes scenes for theater and for shows. So not per se the decor, but the entire combination of the scene, the lights, the musics, so the entire scene. And for his graduation, he made a short play with a lot of different acts going on. And when we talked about it, everybody that we had a discussion with, they had a different feeling about it. And that for him was what he wanted to achieve. There were some parts that were a bit scary. So some people felt scared about certain parts. Some people felt amazed by certain light and fire effects that he had. So I believe it has to trigger you somehow. It has to make you think. It has to make you feel in a certain way. Not per se the way that the artist intended it. That's an integral part and some kind of extension of the replication idea.
But like bad art could piss me off, right? And that also does something to me. So I what's the difference then between?
That's a good question. Yeah.
Well, I think that it needs to be reliable in causing the effect. So it doesn't have to be any particular effect, but it just has to be reliable. So if it reliably makes you angry, then they're doing something right in that it's reliable.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you could use that in a different work of art. You can use whatever it is that's making you angry reliably and use that in a different work of art and use that as a contrast with something else. And now you have this play of different forms of transformations on the mind of the people who are watching it. So that's how I see it personally.
Ah, cool. Yeah. It reminds me to bounce that problem a bit back. Before we do our episode, we always listen to Brett Hall podcast, his talkcast, and his take on the chapter. And one of the things that he says there, well, there's like this popular sentence that goes, yeah, what is art? Like anything can be art. But he refutes that. He says if anything can be art, then it loses all meaning, which I think is an interesting take, because then bad
I
art.
disagree.
Yeah. So bad art.
Go on.
Bad art could be considered art if it makes you feel angry, reliably. So how
that's what makes you angry, is because it's not art.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that is more.
That's the golden toilet in the Guggenheimer Museum.
Right.
Yeah.
The postmodern type art, right, which really is more like politically. It's like a purely political driven form of art that doesn't even try to espouse to something objectively beautiful. It just completely just enters into a completely political, let's say, vehicle, or objective, if you will. I think that was, to me, also a bit, because I think the art world, or the let's say the culture around art, is sometimes a little bit overwhelming to normal people, because you're kind of like sometimes shamed into not, like, why don't you see it? Why don't you understand it? Like, why don't you like this? And I think, maybe that's more of a cultural element that exists within the art world, that I know, like, I had friends, or maybe ex-girlfriends of mine even, that were really into art, and they would almost get angry at me that I wouldn't appreciate it as much as they did. And it's like, don't you think this, that we be staring at this thing and the paintings, and I was like, I mean, I'm happy you like it. That was always my thing, but I always found myself a lot more interested in the little words next to the paintings that describe the author and his motivations and the time he lived in, and kind of, they have this little bio, right, as it relates to the painting. And I almost don't care about the physical painting itself. I'm a lot more interested to read why this guy did this, or what this guy was about. So I find that also kind of, anyway, that's a bit of a tangent, but my point more being is that I think there's also some people are kept out of it because of maybe the snobistic culture that sometimes comes with it.
Yeah, I definitely think so, and I think it is it's as much as a mistake as we talk about with the coercion of school. If you ever listen to the taking children seriously type stuff, right? If you don't get it, then you're bad, or whatever, or you need to understand this particular thing. It seems very similar to that, right? Mm-hmm. Not everybody's going to understand every work of art immediately, and they don't need to. You find the works of arts that you like. I actually do like Duchamp, and I like Dada art. So I quite like that type of postmodern thing. And I wouldn't call it not art, but okay. I think you did, Thomas, you did say, you made a distinction that's a very clear and good distinction, that there are some art that is attempting to make objectively better knowledge, and there's some art that's not. And you can just make that clear distinction there. Right. Or you can make the distinction that there's some art that's improving techniques, or improving knowledge, or improving beauty, and some that isn't. Whether or not, you can still just call it art, but just say it's not doing those things.
Yeah.
So that's how I would do it.
Yeah. And you also said that you disagree that if everything is art, then it can be art and it loses meaning. So if I understand you correctly, you do believe that anything can be art?
Yes, maybe. I don't think I have a clear, solid definition of what art is. So, and I don't think it's relevant. Yeah. It's like saying, I'd be comfortable saying that everything is knowledge, right? But some knowledge has more reach. And it's just that simple. And I care about the knowledge that has a lot of reach. So I might even say that physical structures are knowledge, because they're structures that are reliable. They stay, intact for a certain amount of time, and they stay intact for a certain proportion of the multiverse or whatever. They're just reliable structures. And really what we're talking about is reliable structures. And then we can make the distinction of, okay, this is a reliable structure that replicates. And that's you can say all knowledge is the stuff that replicates and not the stuff that doesn't replicate, or all knowledge is the stuff that it has to replicate, but it has to replicate in a different form, so it's abstract. You can make those distinctions, but I don't think it really matters to say this is knowledge or this isn't knowledge, when you can also have the other distinction of, I'm talking about the reach of knowledge, and I care about the knowledge that is wide-reaching. And the same for beauty. I care about the artworks that are wide-reaching. There's creating new techniques that also apply to other works of art, or that are new techniques that also can be replicated in the minds of other people.
Yeah.
So if I'm making a work of art that's highly subjective, I can't reliably transfer any information to you because there's no reach to my subjective work of art. And I can just call it a low, narrow-reaching work of art.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I think maybe because there is a distinction between explanatory knowledge and non-explanatory knowledge, and so genetic knowledge, or
right.
So I think in order to be able to even appreciate that art, you need explanatory knowledge, right? And that's, I think, where qualia come in, and creativity come in, maybe consciousness comes in as well. I think the latest Deutsch one, I think it was interesting when he said that he thinks that creativity probably evolved for being able to be creative in the sense of like creating new things, but in order to creatively interpret other people's actions rather than creating your own new actions. He conjectures that creativity evolved for that reason, but we are able to apply it now in different domains which go beyond the initial evolutionary reason. So would it be fair to say then that only humans can have art, or what's your take there?
Yeah, I think so. I think only as far as we know currently. But again, it's just, I don't have a strong definition, so I'm, easy to convince, or, loosely I can say that other animals can make art, but only humans can create wide-reaching beauty. So as simple as that. Maybe we can even say the flowers also create wide-reaching beauty, but there's a total difference between the reach of our art and our beauty than anything else that we see.
I think the reach part is important, because when we talk about, only humans can create art, I don't know what the name is, but there's actually a fish, a very small fish, that creates geometric patterns on the seafloor in the sand to attract a mate. So, and that has been well documented, and we humans are fascinated by that, because it's a fish making a piece of art, you could speak, and every fish creates its own patterns, which is quite striking. But I can understand what you mean, that the reach of that is quite limited. So it only reaches other fish of their species, and it reaches us because we find it very fascinating that a fish would make geometric patterns.
Right. And another thing would be that they can't improve it. So this is a part of like AI type of stuff. The AI can make a work of art, but the way that they're programmed, and currently they don't continuously improve any of the art that they create. So you can just say that it's a system that doesn't continuously improve, or is not unbounded in the way that it can improve. So those are other distinctions that could be made.
That's a good take. Okay, let's jump to a problem that we have prepared for you. In the chapter on flowers, we talk about, we've discussed it now as well, beauty as a way of communicating cross species. And during that episode, we talked a bit that certain species can portray certain information to other species. There are these in the Amazonians, very brightly colored frogs. So they do the opposite of camouflaging. They want to be very visible because they signal to potential predators to stay away. I am a poisonous creature. So instead of attracting, like a flower does with a bee, Amazonian frog chases predators away with its brightly colored visuals. So is that beauty? Is that repulsion? How do you see that?
I do see that as beauty. I think that David in his lecture and in his writing, he did not, I don't think he ever said that beauty is knowledge. He didn't say that directly. He does say that beauty might be a form of truth. He kind of hedges it when he says it. But he never says directly beauty is knowledge. So I've taken the jump to say that beauty is knowledge, and I'm running with that. So to communicate and have other species repelled, to communicate that repel, stay away, across a gap of species reliably, that seems to me communicating knowledge using forms and colors and contrast or whatever. That to me seems like beauty. Or it seems like knowledge. Seems like knowledge, seems like beauty. And that's why I kind of take the jump of any reliable transformation. So I'm thinking in terms of, constructor theory type of knowledge. If you can reliably cause a transformation, then that is knowledge. And if you can do that across the species, then there you go. You've got a knowledge that doesn't require any shared knowledge.
I see. So even if something would be considered grotesque, if it still achieves reliably its goal, repelling, then it can be then it's knowledge, and then it can be considered beautiful.
But only to us, right? Just to caveat, in your scenario with these two animals, they don't see it as being grotesque or beautiful to one another. These are just evolutionary reactions to, fight or flee type things and danger, and kind of they want their genetic knowledge to replicate. So they've through their evolutionary pressures have come to evolve knowing that if this animal comes with that thing, they should get out, because otherwise their replication is at stake, right? But we looking at that, I think maybe that's kind of discernment, because I think you're looking at that and thinking, that repulsion is the anti-beauty, but that would again only be to us as an observer. It wouldn't be to them, that thing, because otherwise, if they would creatively be using that repulsion, he could equally start, using that for other purposes, right? Rather than the evolutionary evolved thing that they're applying that venom, or I forget the exact word that you use, but with. So I think it all starts with creativity and our personhood to be able to even have a thought of what beauty is. And it just seems to be that certain things in nature, like a flower, it kind of aligns with that, an explanation. That the explanation would be is that there's such a thing as objective beauty, because all the other things we discussed before. I
fully agree with all that, definitely.
Right, cool. I do need to jump in 10 minutes, guys, but maybe let's see. I did want to kind of maybe pin you down a little bit, Zakery, on like, is it? And I know you're going to say it's repeatable structures and these things, but like, are there specific forms of repeatable structures that you see as being inherently more conducive
to being beautiful, or to being called beautiful?
Yeah.
So the only difference I have, the definition I have that I'm kind of working with, is the knowledge, objective knowledge embodied in works of art. So, but then I'm not defining art. So I'm not getting a real, I'm going one layer deeper, but I'm not really giving you a solid definition here. But it's really just objective knowledge that I'm talking about. But I'm referring to the objective knowledge that is specifically embodied in works of art.
Right.
And as long as it's reliable in terms of it can persist, like it keeps the work of art the same, or, it's persist, it keeps itself instantiated. I don't know, remember the exact term that David used when he talks about it. But if it can persist and it can replicate and it can be independently improved, then that would be knowledge. And I'm just talking about the knowledge that is embodied in works of art.
It's almost like knowledge that is only used for the sake of, I don't know, being observed or something, right? Maybe would that be kind of where
yes,
art would start and stop?
But it also they can be used for different purposes, right? You can sometimes you have when you have works of art, they're kind of improving the knowledge for the sake of improving the knowledge. You just want to explore and improve the knowledge. In the same way you do science, you just want to improve the knowledge that you have. But then you can apply it in technologies, or you can apply it in commercials. This is kind of, I think the example that David Deutsch gives is you can have beauty that is discovered with art, and then you can use that beauty for selling soap. And now you are using it. So it's knowledge that can just be applied, but it's no longer being used to improve the knowledge. So it's not artistic in that way because it's not trying to improve it open-endedly. It's just using it. So that's the main difference. But I think the beauty could be used in any other circumstance. You can just apply it to other things.
Right.
Yeah. And since we just have a couple of minutes left, Zakery, is there a final problem that you would like to discuss, that you would like to throw in the group?
Okay, another problem that I have, and I'm thinking about, this is a little bit more, it's more broad, but I'm thinking of a person, and if there are multiple different partitions within a person that all separately count as a person, meaning that they're separate partitions of a person that are fully capable of creativity and explaining anything. They're universal explainers. So all that means is that could you divide a regular human, and say that in a simplistic way, they have a logical module in their brain that is fully a universal explainer, and they have an emotional module in their brain that is fully a universal explainer, and they're separate. Or, there's the explicit part of the brain that's universal explainer, and there's the inexplicit part. I'm thinking in those terms. And the reason why I'm thinking about this is you might have a case of enjoying a work of art where it's easily enjoyed explicitly but not inexplicitly, or it's easily enjoyed inexplicitly but not explicitly. And then there's a dissonance between those, which causes some problems in a person. So anyway, any part of that's the problem that I'm thinking about. What do you guys think?
You think that's you're thinking that's inherently maybe like a software versus there's certain software components within the brain that attribute to one or the other kind of thing.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And I don't think it's super clean in that way, but
Yeah.
in the same way, if you have a computer, you can have a computer, and the computer can do anything, right? It can do any transformation or whatever, any calculation. But then you can have a program within the computer, like Minecraft, that is a full Turing, it's a Turing complete program. So you could have a universal Turing machine on that program, which is a subsection of the entire computer. And you can run multiple different, programs that are subsections that are Turing complete, which means you could have something that understands, in one partition of the computer, but not the entire computer, or in different partitions, they understand it differently.
Right. My initial gut reaction would be, I think if you mess around a little bit with any of the algo, let's say, that you dissolve the entire universal explanatory power, and the reason for that is I think because we have that way like 99.9%, genetically the same as was it chimpanzees, or I forget, macaques, maybe even I forget which ape, but so the implication, we infer from that the algorithm for universal explaining is a very tiny algorithm. It doesn't need a lot of compute power, hardware, vis-a-vis that ape, right? So there's an algorithmic innovation rather than a hardware one, but we do know it requires some hardware to run. And I was talking to one of my friends who I believe, so he both of his parents are they have mental disabilities. Like I think one of them has Down syndrome, and or maybe both even have Down syndrome, and he doesn't. And so he kind of he comes out of this thinking about consciousness a lot. He comes out of this thinking a lot about, why didn't I have that, and maybe the genetic reasons for that. But then we were talking about this, and how does this model of universal explainer map onto, for example, people with Down syndrome? Because aren't they in principle also kind of able to universally explain anything away, or aren't they? So I was coming, my after a couple of thinking, and obviously, could be very wrong about this, was that they do have the software of universal explainer, but their hardware isn't tuned to that, and that's the quote unquote handicap that they have. It's not a software one, but a hardware one.
So it's a neurological differences in the brain, actually, that causes them to be non-universal explainers. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, like, let's say you have a computer, and let's say we have the code of universal explainers, right? We have the person code, and I'm guessing there's going to be a minimum computer requirement in terms of hardware where that thing's going to run on. And if you take a little bit away, 10%, and you're like at that threshold where it doesn't do it anymore, then it doesn't do it anymore. It has some functionality of it, but it doesn't have the complete access to the entire algorithm. That's what I mean. So, and again, I could be wrong. Maybe they are, the people that have Down syndrome are just, maybe their hardware is similar. I just haven't done the research. I just thought, anyway, the reason I bring this to this conversation is because I don't, that would be the exact question, right? Can people with Down syndrome, for example, appreciate art in the same way that we can? Or can, because they do have a difference in again, I don't know if it's the mind or in the brain, but if you're going to reduce that into, is there a part of us that explicitly or implicitly has the beauty radar on or something? My initial intuition would be, I don't think so. I think you would be able to less creatively approach it, and you wouldn't be able to, I don't know. You wouldn't be able to understand it. But yeah, but again, that's kind of saying the same thing. This is all new thoughts coming out. I haven't given this. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I just think that certain people are inefficient at certain calculations. That's kind of how I think about it.
Okay.
Not that any person would be incapable of any calculation. It's just that they would just be less efficient at certain calculations, right? Some people are better at doing math problems quickly than other people are at doing math problems, and you can learn how to do that. But there's just some limits to how efficient you can get with that. That's right. Kind of how I see it.
Sure.
Yeah, that's how I would think of the difference between a person with Down syndrome but I don't actually know how to test that idea, that right. They still could in principle do any calculation or have any thought. They're just slightly slower at some of them. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't think it's, and maybe I don't want to be speaking out of my mouth here, so maybe we should do some research, because I'm not picking on people with Down syndrome. Obviously, I've met many of them. They're wonderful people. They're so great. They're really fantastic people. But I think it's just an interesting case study to see where potentially the mind and the brain kind of how are they different, right? And where is that difference? But then as it relates to beauty, I think I don't know. I think, like Deutsch says, either you are universal explainer or you're not, right? It's binary.
Well, I think that's true. I think you are a universal explainer, and I agree with that. But I think I would imagine that there are partitions, not necessarily like hard partitions, but I think you can understand things linguistically, or you can understand things, let's just say emotionally. Like, that's just kind of a simple way of putting it. But you can understand anything linguistically, and you can understand anything emotionally. Maybe, I'm just putting it in simple terms. Or you could replicate any idea visually, or you can replicate any idea auditorily. And both of those would be a replication of any idea. But some people are better at doing it visually than they are auditorily, and some people are better at it in the other way. And the way that I would think about this is that if you're appreciating a work of art, you might be able to replicate it and do whatever replication and whatever else you need to do inexplicitly, but you can't do it explicitly. So you can't then talk about it, or you can't verbalize it in any sense. So then you might have a dissonance between I feel like I like it because I can appreciate it inexplicitly, but I can't explicitly appreciate it.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you have to learn how to explicitly appreciate
it. It's like when you hear a song and it's that good that like your hairs on your neck start to stand up, or your arms, and you get this tingling feeling, but you cannot, so you experience it that way, but you cannot explicitly explain why and what did that causes that. Is that what you mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly that. And I think that would, if we might overly emphasize one form over the other, right? We might overly say you have to explicitly like it. Mm-hmm. So if you can't tell me how you like it, then you're bad and wrong or whatever. So then you feel bad about liking it inexplicitly but not being able to like it, right? Like you can start to think about like if somebody's in a culture where they're explicitly told to not like something, and they have they've replicated that into their mind explicitly, so now they explicitly do not like pop music, for example. But then they listen to Britney Spears and they're like, I kind of do like I like it emotionally, but anytime I think about it logically or with my linguistic mind, I can only talk about how I don't like it. So now there's this dissonance between liking it and disliking it.
Yeah, because you were coerced almost into not liking it, kind of.
Right.
Yeah, right. I understand what you say here, and I totally have that with like the first reboot movie of Star Wars, The Phantom Menace. Yeah, everybody hates that movie, and I have seen like a 3-hour video essay once on explaining rationally every part of it, why it is bad. And I understand that, and I even follow that, and I agree with everything that is said there. Right. But I still like that movie. I still enjoy it. But if I have to explain like what is it, and so that's absolute. So I completely recognize the dissonance there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, that's one of my problems. But yeah, Thomas is sharing some of the issues with it. It's not really well formulated fully. I don't have a full clarification of what it would mean to have multiple different replicators or processes of replication and creativity in the mind.
What would be interesting to read a bit up onto is split brain patients. I've seen a video on where they did experiments on split brain patients. So those are people who have like the connection between left and right brain completely severed.
Yes.
And when you see these experiments that they did with them, is for example that they will show a picture on the left side of the paper, and then it will not be picked up by their entire consciousness. Yeah, because
the Wernicke-Broca thing, right, where they have the brain severed. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
And
they don't even remember that they were one person. Apparently.
Indeed, and they don't even see the picture on the left. And even when they ask them, hey, what do you think about the picture on the left? Then it strikes their consciousness, but they cannot fathom the idea that they just missed it. So they start to rationalize it and say, oh yeah, but that picture wasn't there before. You know, it just appeared out of nowhere. And the profound insight from those experiments were that you are maybe as a person not one whole. You know, you're just not one consciousness, but it's made from different compartments that interact with each other and that communicate with each other.
Yeah, I think that. So Hoffman, he wrote in his book, The Case Against Reality or something, which is, in retrospect, the worst book I've ever could have read, because it is basically solipsism and consciousness all the way down. But he did make some mathematical arguments, and some things were kind of neat to know in that book. And he speaks about the people that, they called them the butchers of Los Angeles or something. There were these doctors that basically were solving epilepsy attacks by severing the connection of the two brain hemispheres from one another, and they actually solved 99% of all epileptic cases because you don't allow the explosion of neurons to go to the other brain, which apparently kind of solves the attacks, but obviously has other kind of downstream effects. But so when these people that they operated on because they thought it was a good thing to do, they weren't doing it because they were evil. They really thought they were kind of solving and helping them out. And when they studied these people, they would, as Erik said, the way to do this is by closing one eye, because then you only communicate to the one hemisphere. And there's one documented case of a guy being both an atheist and religious at the same time, depending on which brain half you talk to. And they also kind of, like I said, they don't remember that they were once one whole. They have no consciousness of once being the one brain anymore. So it's a very I don't think it means that I think it means that consciousness is dividable within our material construct, but that it is unique also, so that who you are now is unique and also changes over time, because who you were as a child and the problems you were solving then is different than who you are now. I think that's more of a problem with how we think about identity than it is necessarily, kind of, I think both are conscious. That doesn't mean it's the same consciousness, right? So this idea of yourself kind of being lost is, I think, Deutsch also speaks about these things, but maybe that's tangential. But the point I wanted to make here was that I think it speaks to that we have enough hardware to support at least kind of two consciousnesses, if you will. I don't think you can keep doing that all the way down. Like, I don't think there's like a unit. I mean, maybe there's like a unit of consciousness. That's what Hoffman argues for, kind of, and that's where he's kind of, that's his missing thing that he's trying to go for, which I don't think he'll ever get there, because it's quite literally impossible. It's a solipsistic argument to make, but that was my counter to what you were saying, Erik. I think it is divisible, but not infinitely so.
Interesting. Okay. Before we wrap up, Zakery, any other closing thoughts or things you want to throw in the group?
This was just a lot of fun. I really appreciate being here. I had a great time. And I'd love to talk again. Yeah, if you ever have more questions or, whatever, I'll be watching your podcast and I'll be commenting. So I may want to ask some questions to you guys too.
Cool.
Sure.
Yeah,
all right.
Very happy to be here.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks
Thomas,
a lot.
Your closing thoughts?
No, it's great to have this, and we look forward to maybe doing a V2 of this or at some point in time. I would we easily went to 1 hour and 40 now, and if I didn't have to go, we could probably do this even longer. So definitely up for next round. Maybe after we've given all these problems that we've discussed a little bit more thought, so we can iterate on that and error correct. So
awesome.
Appreciate you taking the time. And thank you obviously for watching the show. And look forward to seeing and hearing more about you as well. Yeah,
absolutely. Super thanks, Zakery, for joining us. One final question for you: where can people find you? We will put a link to your channel in the description. Any other social media? Your music, is it listenable somewhere on Spotify? Let us know.
Yeah. Music is on Spotify. It's under the name Fakery.
Okay.
So spelled like my name, but with an F.
Yeah.
Fakery is the name that you can find on Spotify. And if you want to find me on YouTube, it's Zakery. And I'm talking about aesthetics and beauty. And I'm very, very interested in it. It's all I think about all the time. I'm trying to find other people who are interested in critical rationalism and applying that and constructor theory to aesthetics. So if anybody has those types of ideas, please message me, DM me, whatever. I'm also on X. You can find me on X, same name, Zakery. So
perfect.
Those are the places.
All right, great.
Awesome.
We will put all of those credentials in the description of this video. Thank you so much, Zakery. Thank you so much, Thomas. And see you, everybody, next time.